This video is about the cQ-Baseline volume indicator. This indicator is the same thing, or it's been renamed. It was called the cQ-Baseline DATR BBands Singles indicators, but I think this name is more appropriate, so I'm going to keep it. The previous version of the cQ-Baseline DATR BBands Singles had a problem with the binaries, the compiler. There was some sort of some error, and they just weren't working properly. Okay, I'm going to start this so you can see what I see before I release it. After this short introduction, the rest of the video is going to be the same video that I used on the cQ-Baseline DATR BBands indicator. So the dialog boxes will probably look different and the names will be different, but it's the same indicator. What this new set of indicators is each one has its own moving average, and there's a file for each one of them. I've broken it down into two variations. The first variation is what I call standard, and all these are indicators that don't really have any extra parameters or anything like that, and that's it. That's all this standard version has. What the advanced versions have is more parameters have been added, two of which of some interest are the hull, which has these different modes you can run it in: linear, exponential, simple, smooth, and then triple. Then it has the same pre-smooth, and pretty much everything else is the same. On the advanced versions, I took this out. I don't think it's that important of a thing, but I wanted it to be consistent with the previous versions that we had the problems with, so I left those in. And the other version is what I call the super duper trend. It has these range type modes where the basic super trend uses the ATR and the CCI. ATR is basically the range, how high or how close it follows price. The higher the ATR, the further away from price, the longer the lines are, straighter the lines are, that kind of thing. And then the CCI, it determines the direction. So what I've added here is B-bands instead of ATR, which will give you a slightly different variation. And then I've added these slope ATR and slope B-bands. And what the slope is it uses these indicators here. It determines the direction by the slope that the oscillator is producing at the time. And then it can either apply the ATR setting or it can apply the B-bands. And you can change this to B-bands, get a slightly different, on some of them it does change it even, quite a bit more. And then you have the slope ATR, which is using the CCI. Right now it's currently using the CCI. And then you have the B-bands variation, of which you can control the width or the deviation of the B-bands here and the ATR multiplier there that control the same thing. And then you can change the period as well, just as like the normal super trend. Then you can change these. So these will also give you a different response. And at the same time, you can even make it more different by having a pre-smooth. You can see what it does. This would probably work really well for certain algorithms. If you have this set to yes, it will apply this smoothing we applied to the envelopes as well. If you set it to no, then it won't apply this pre-smoothing to the envelopes. So set it to no. As you can tell, this is a little less smooth, but actually looks like it works a little better. So you can get quite a variety just with this one option here. Anyway, that's what I mean by advanced. So there's going to be something added to them. I have a number of them that will be like that. And then you still have all these. You still have these modes, which again will be explained in this video to follow. This video is about the cQ-Baseline DATR BBands indicator version 2. This is a volume indicator. You can either use it in conjunction with your current volume indicator or use it as a filter, maybe even a confirmation indicator. And in version 2, what I've done is I've removed the exit part of the indicator, trying to make things a little easier to use. And I've added a few more of these, what I'm calling show dots mode, these here. I've also made a bunch of single indicators that have basically one baseline indicator for the entry. Let me show you one of those, like this one. There's fewer parameters, which would make it easier to use for an expert advisor if you wanted to do that, as opposed to the longer list of moving average or baseline parameters. I've taken a lot of them out. Each indicator only has one moving average for the baseline, and then all the ones for the B-bands, they're all set at their default values. You still get a wide variation without dealing with any of the moving average parameters. Anyway, there's a whole bunch. That's what all these over here, I have, currently this is what we have. I've also consolidated all the parameters that you would most likely use or change right into this area. You know, this is the deviation, which you probably will be changing that a lot. And then these all control the exit envelope and then the entry envelope. But the green, as usual, are the entry envelopes, or B-bands, and then the red is the exit envelopes. And I'll explain what these are as we go through these various parameters, especially when we get to this. But I added this, how the dots are drawn. I draw the dots using the close, the baseline applied price, or a moving average. And the moving average is this. This is the period, and this is the type. Just have the 4 basic types. The close is what you normally see. Like right now, that's what these are. When the close gets below this line, then it will draw the dot. The thing is, if you go down here and you change this applied price to say something like this Heikin-Ashi, trend biased, and then you set this to use the baseline applied price to draw the dot. A number of these, like see this one here, the close isn't normally there. The close would be up here. It wouldn't draw the dot there normally. Same here. So that's why it will look funky, because that's what you're telling it to do. The other thing is this moving average will, depending on some it works well, some it doesn't. I'm going to change this so you can see it. Anyway, you can see that when the moving average gets above, as opposed when the close gets above, on some of these, you can just experiment with it. On some of them, it works really well. Other ones, it's not, doesn't help at all. So that's what this draw the dots thing basically is. Usually you'd probably just want to leave it on the close if you don't want to mess with trying it. But if you're looking for something a little different or have some time, you can try that. Here's the baseline in this version, which is BBands 2. You have all these baselines to choose from. And down here, this is where the various baseline parameters are. And then down here even further, this is where all the B-band moving average parameters are where you would change them. Again, what I did is I consolidated all this, tried to get them all closer together so you wouldn't have to spend so much time looking around to find out which one you want to change. We also have the same entry bands. There's a number of modes you can choose from, where the first one is the DATR, which is the directional ATR. It calculates it and then applies a Bollinger Band algorithm to it and draws it on here, and that's what you're seeing. And there's an alternate DATR calculation, slightly different. Then there's the same thing, but reversed. The upper is reversed with the lower. Then we have the alt reversed, which is the same type of thing. If you were to select the price input and SMA, you would be getting somewhat closer to a normal Bollinger Band calculation. Then you have the high and the low, where you're running the high through a Bollinger Band and it prints the upper band, and then the low prints the lower band. You can have that reversed. And sometimes you may have to change the deviation. You may have to increase it, say on the DATR, just because it's the way it's calculated. This here we have an alternate high-low calculation mode for the Bollinger Bands. And the limit, the ATR limit, which is basically draws these red dots. Right now, the multiplier is set for 2 times the ATR, which is generally not the normal. It's usually 1 times the ATR. You can change this to whatever you want. You can change the period. And right now, it's set to generate a red dot if it's over 2 times the ATR, basically from this baseline right here. Oh, this one here, for example, that's probably is over 2 times the ATR. It has the close to close is higher than this value, this ATR limit. You can also have the high to low, which will probably generate even more red dots because you're using the high to low. Then there's the distance from the exit envelopes, which are these red lines. And then it'll generate a dot from the baseline, which is the default. And then you can have the baseline or close to close. Either one of those will generate a red dot. Distance from the baseline and the high to low will generate a dot. And then distance from the exit, close to close, distance from the exit, high to low. Measurement type, currently it's set to 1 time. So when, like this single candle, it does it candle by candle. This one is generating a dot just on that particular candle. If you put it to contiguous, like this, then this whole sequence will generate red dots. I guess now I should try to explain these show dot modes. And we'll just start with the first one, which is price above, below, or below the entry band, which right now you can barely see this red band probably, but the green band is the entry band, and if price gets above it or below it, then it generates a dot. The next one, go here, we're now using the reverse price when price is above or below the entry. And what reverse means is the Bollinger Band is tied to this upper level, and it's pushing down. The upper one pushes down, while the lower one pushes up. So that's what the reverse basically means. The way it's read is When price is above or below the entry lines, generate a red dot. You can change these. For example, we can make it 3 because and it'll move it up. And now you don't get hardly anything. And then you can move this down because we're using the exit envelopes as the anchor, the attach point. You can get a lot more in there depending. And then at the same time, let me put this back to 3. And now you can see what that looks like. The deviation works backwards. So when you say I make it 2, it's pushing it down. So you actually you get more. It's going the opposite way of what you normally would think a Bollinger Band would go. And then if you put this like at 0.5, then it ends up being closer to the exit band. So in essence, that's how a lot of these modes are, the new different modes. And this next one, price is above or below the exit envelope, and it'll print a dot. So if you made this 1, make it wider, you get fewer choices. I mean, it's pretty simple. That's a pretty simple one, if you wanted that one. And there's no entry B-bands are used. Okay, and then the next one is this. This is the default. It's when the entry bands must be above or below the exit envelopes. Blue dot and up dot to be drawn. Price has to be above the baseline here. And then this entry band, the green band, B band, is above the exit red band, so it draws a dot. And here it is too, even though price is below. It just has nothing to do with price. It basically is just measuring using the entry envelope and the exit envelope. Like here, the lower entry B band is below the exit envelope, so it draws a dot. So that's how come you get this particular look. The next mode is when price is above the entry and the entry is above the exit, below the exit. So price is either above or below the entry bands, and the entry bands are above or below the exit bands, which is what we have here. Because here we have price is above both the exit and entry bands, and the entry band is above the exit band. Same here. This is not a bad algorithm. I think it's, Okay, this next one is another reverse one, which is reverse price, number 6. Reverse price, where price is above or below the entry, and then price is within the exit bands. And these are the exit bands, and the entry B bands are attached to this upper, and then the lower one's attached to this bottom band. And again, they're pushing in, but price has to be within this exit area. Like, see this one, it doesn't get a dot, even though it's above the entry band. It's not within this exit area. So this is one way you could keep it within a certain ATR of the baseline, if that's important. Okay, the next mode is the reverse outer price, when price is above or below the entry. This is actually just an envelope indicator. These, you don't see these. These sort of manipulate these entry envelope B bands here. These are what's being used when you have outer in the name, that the B bands, instead of being attached, say, to the exit, they're attached to this outer envelope. And what this one is saying is that the price has to be above or below the entry band. So it's pretty straightforward. As you can see, if it's above or below, if it gets inside here, it doesn't print a red dot. And then there's no exit envelopes are not being used, so there's no red. to come there. I turned it off. You can change this stuff. For example, the outer band again. Say you want it, move it up higher. As you can see, there's fewer candles now that are available. And if you want to change the ATR period, you can do that. You can lower it again. And changing anything on the exit won't change anything. It also has an inner envelope here, which I should probably say we'll put it to 5. Actually, I won't put it to anything because I want you to see the difference that it does. Okay, you see here where it gets kind of narrow? This inner band on the entry B band, set this to 0.5. Now you see how it widened that up? That's the minimum. That's an inner band, and it won't go past that inner band. So if you have this to 0, it will basically go on this reverse outside. It will go all the way to and stop at the baseline itself. But this is a way you can get the inner envelope and this exit envelope on certain modes. You get some really interesting things. So that's what the inner envelope does. This next mode is the reverse outer when price is above or below the entry line and price is above or below the exit level. So, which that's what this is here. The price is above or below, it's currently below both the exit and entry. Here it's above both the exit and entry. So if it gets in between here, it doesn't draw a dot. And if you wanted to get more dots, you could lessen this. And you should get a few more. Or you got this one, for example. And for the most part, that's this mode. This next mode is reverse outer when price is above or below the entry and the entry is above or below the exit. So that's what we have here. Price is below the entry and the entry is below the exit. And on this one, this up, where price is above the entry and the entry is above the exit. And if you wanted to, say, reduce the number of possible entry points, you could raise that. Again, it's using these outer bands, which you don't see. These entry B bands are anchored to this outer band. That's what happens when you see an outer word there. So they're, again, pushing down. And if you wanted to have more, you would actually raise this to, say, 1.5. You would, but you see it's pushing it closer to the baseline. Okay, that's that mode. Or this next show dots mode is the reverse outer when price is above or below the entry level, and the entry level is within the exit envelope. So, for example, this right here, price is above the entry B bands, and the entry band is within the exit. It's below, basically, this exit. It's inside here. And this down here is the same thing. Price is above or below the entry level and above the exit level. So that's when it draws a dot. Okay, this next mode is the reverse outer when price is above or below the entry level and the entry level is within the exit envelopes. So if you look here on this one, the entry level or price is above the entry level, the green line, and the green line is within the red, which the entry is within the exit envelope, so it draws a dot. Same thing here. At this point, the entry got outside the exit envelope, these two evidently. So it didn't draw dots there, but on these, as it fell back in. So that's this mode. You could add this inner thing. You could have this have a limit on the inside. Get it right next to that. I mean, if you, or you can have erase the outer envelope, which again, this is just an envelope indicator just to demonstrate this line. It's not actually a part of this indicator at the moment. So anyway, that is the modes, and we'll put a couple of these, which these are the single, I'm just calling them the baseline DATR BBands single baseline indicators. I think currently there's 20. Tricolor. Because this one has, there's a few that have this pre-smooth, which is pretty interesting, and it does give you a lot of variation. This is the Kalman adaptive, and just put it on there. This is the current curve. If you don't want to deal, and it's using this zero lag, but you can select from any of these, for example. But if you don't want it, you set this to 1, just to bypass it. It does get pretty tricky. You can kind of get granular, very granular with it. And again, it has all the basic parameters as the other one has all these. These all are the same. The B-band calculation, moving averages these are all here. Again, you can't change any of those parameters. They're just set. But at the same time, you only have this many parameters to deal with to pass if you're using it as an expert advisor. So there's that one, like this one, which you may want to just go through and see what some of them actually do. Not all of them have the pre-smooth. I probably could have put it in there, but I didn't run into it until I got to the common one. But this is a smooth Keejanson, if that's how it's pronounced. I may have said that wrong, but it's pretty good. It's a good one. I like this one as far as a baseline. And anyway, you have all these types here, and they'll be all in the zip file. I guess that's it for version 2.